This is a crucial part of putting up any kind of maps listing that does not have an actual address. And that is choosing and finding the right type of address. And don't underestimate the importance of doing this well because, and one of the main reasons why is because more often than not, if you're in some kind of a lead generation business or you're setting up um, pins on the map that are not an actual location where you have a physical presence, Google eventually, or someone, maybe even a volunteer, white hat spam warrior, somebody's going to look at your business to try to figure out, are you actually there or not? So picking an address where you are protected by the actual address itself helps a lot. Now you might even say, well, it doesn't really matter, right? Because I hide my address. So maybe you have a business where you've kept the address private, so when someone does a Google search, they can't see the actual address. Um, there are still Google employees that can see it, and there continue to be revealed over and over time ways to hack that system to actually make the address show on a Google listing. So you don't want to be stuck with a bad address that doesn't look like a business. Now, the general principle for picking these addresses is you want the address to look, if anyone ever looked at it from, especially from Google Street View, you would want it to look like the business could actually be there. So the general principle would be, let's say if you're doing like an insurance type of a listing, you would want it to look like an office type building, a place where some kind of clerical businesses could exist. It might be a high rise that has multiple businesses and offices inside it. It might be a strip mall with offices. Something where if someone looked, they said, I could see an insurance agency actually being there. Now, if you're doing like a service area business where people are storing equipment or trucks or things like that, like let's say an electrician, then you're going to want the address that you pick to be an industrial looking area. Maybe it's a warehouse, or maybe it's a factory looking place, or maybe it's in an industrial corridor of some type, and you want it to look like that business could actually be there. That's the big idea, okay? Now I'm going to give you some different tips about picking the address. As long as you have in your mind, I am looking for an address that looks like this business type could actually exist there. Now, here's what I'm looking at: an area of Chicago here that I know has a lot of sort of blank buildings, and that's mainly what you're looking for. Is when you go into Street View, you want there to be like blank looking buildings that could have a business there, but you're not quite sure. Okay, so we're just going to take a drive down the street here and take a look. Now, what I'm looking for is a business that doesn't have a sign clearly in Street View. So you wouldn't want to pick an address like this, because when you look in Street View, clearly there's a business there. All right, so we're going to skip that building. You don't want there to be an address. I like to do strip malls, particularly strip malls where the actual strip mall stores are set way back off the street. Sometimes I will just go ahead and look for a strip mall in the area, and LoopNet's a big source, although LoopNet's getting a little overused because I've talked about LoopNet a lot in the past, so you want to be careful with LoopNet. Make sure other people haven't already tried to hop on that address, but you can easily find a strip mall or like a shopping center, not like a mall. You don't want to choose like an indoor mall, like a mall where the entire thing is inside and all the stores and there's like walking areas inside. You want it to be an outdoor mall, an outdoor shopping center, where the businesses actually have exterior doors that lead to the outside. Um, But a strip mall that's set way back from the street is a good one a lot of times to look at, just because a strip mall has a lot of addresses in it, and it is often in front of it, at least in the USA, there's a big parking lot like you see here, and the actual store is usually set way back from the street. So when Street View comes through, when Google comes through and takes their photos, they don't get a clear view of the signage on each storefront, and that's going to help you out a lot if anyone ever looks at your listing in detail. You see this one, how far back those stores are set, so you can't really see the signs. You're looking for something like that. Now, obviously, if you're not doing a business that it would be in a strip mall, you don't want to pick a strip mall. So back to Chicago. You can see here here's a typical looking building that could be used for something like this. You can see it is kind of industrial looking. It's sort of commercial looking, but it's hard to tell. Is there a store there? What exactly is there? Difficult to tell. Although it wouldn't be hard to imagine that there would be some kind of a commercial establishment here. And now this one might be more of an industrial here. Now if you look over here, here's another good one. See this giant nondescript building? If you were doing something that was a little more industrial in nature, this would be a good type of an address to use. And you can see as you're scrolling through, your address appears right here in the left for you can use. Now, the next thing that I do, once I decide, okay, I'm going to do my whatever my service area business, say it's an electrician, I'm going to use this address. You want to actually then do a Google search and make sure that the address doesn't have anything on it. Okay, so you're just doing a search for the simple address here, and you're looking for is anything here at 4779 South Halsted Street, and scrolling down just making sure. Okay, I don't see anything there. Now let's say if I scroll down and there was a business already listed at this address, then you wouldn't want to use that address because it's going to cause confusion. It's going to cause skepticism on the part of anyone analyzing your listing. And so what I'll often do is I'll add 2 numbers to the address. So let's say say there was a business at 4779 South Halsted. I'm just going to make it 4781. Okay, added 2 to it. The reason why I add 2, especially in the USA, is for the most part in the USA, all the odd numbers are going to be on one side of the street and all the even numbers are going to be on the other side of the street. So we don't want to switch sides of the street because we want to keep the same street view visible, but we don't want to add too much to the address because we want to stay in the same street view. So you can see if I go to 4781 South Halsted and I click in here and then I look at the street view, you can see that same nondescript building is right here in the street view. It's only moved down maybe 10 feet, and I've avoided having overlap with another business that might exist at that exact address. You also want to make sure there's not another business of the same type. This might be obvious, but you don't want another business of the same type on that block. Sometimes I see as I'm doing research and setting up my own stuff, I'll see you've got 10 locksmiths all on the same block. That is a recipe for disaster ranking wise. You don't want to do that. So if you see another business there that's in the same category, in the same market, just move to another area in the same neighborhood. You don't want to be close to them at all. Now, if you are needing to actually receive a postcard, okay, for the business, this isn't going to work. You're going to actually have to pick an address where you can actually receive mail. And a lot of people will automatically, just choose a virtual office provider. That's a real common thing people do. But you want to stay away from Regus or any kind of big national chain like Regus. You don't want it to be easy for Google to identify that your listing is part of a huge brand, national brand that offers virtual office space. Now, virtual offices are offices where they basically give you like a mailbox, okay? But they let you use the word like suite number, and sometimes they even have like other things like a virtual receptionist or the ability for you to use a conference room, things like that. And this can be great for Google listings because you can receive a postcard there. You can get your postcard verification from Google, and you can set it all up, and it's a professional address, especially in like a white collar type of market, like in insurance, like I talked about earlier, the example of an insurance agency. Virtual office providers can be really powerful because they, if you look on Street View, it looks like your office is actually in like a big high rise, and it's all postcard verified and legit looking. You can even meet clients there if you have to, if it's a virtual office provider that lets you utilize like a meeting area or a conference room. But do not use big national companies like Regus that have locations all over, because it's a very easy way to get caught. And I shouldn't even have to say this, but like places like mailboxes, etc., UPS store, these are all places where you can easily get a mailbox. They're also places where it would be very easy for Google to buy the data from UPS and simply cross-reference every single listing in their database that was created at a UPS store or a mailboxes, etc., or a Regus location, and just spank the heck out of every single one of them. Okay, so you don't want to you want to stay under the radar. And one of the places I love to look for virtual office providers that are not national chains, which is what you want, are Craigslist. Because Craigslist is a place where you've got individual building owners advertising their services, and they are, a lot of times they just have one or two. They might be just in a couple of cities, or just maybe even only in one city. And it's a great place to find virtual office providers. Now, what you're looking for here when you look for a virtual office provider is someone, and this is really important, you want a virtual office provider that offers mailbox services, like I mentioned earlier, so you can receive your verification, but you also want them to offer actual office space. Because what that does is it makes it difficult for anyone analyzing your listing to figure out, do you actually have an office there, or do you have just a mailbox there? And that's really important, because if all they offer is virtual mailboxes, then it's clear to anyone analyzing your listing and your listing's address that that is not real, because all that company offers is virtual mailboxes. But if you choose a provider that has both office space and virtual mailbox service, then no one looking from the outside will be able to tell if you actually have rented an office there, or if you only have a mailbox. And that's really important. The other reason why this is important is it allows you to set up listings ahead of time. Let's say you set up listings and then you realize, wow, I don't have my listing claimed, but now I'd like to actually claim it. All you have to do is go and open an office space at that address, because you picked an address of a service that offers virtual office mailbox services. And then you just turned your listing from an unclaimed, spammy looking thing to a postcard verified listing. And that's another powerful reason to choose an address that is the same address as a virtual office provider. Now, I like to go to Craigslist because, again, like I said, it's going to be small-time operators that have a small footprint. They're not going to be, it's not going to be super obvious to Google that this is like some kind of a national chain like Regis or something like that. And I'll just click straight here on the office and commercial section, and that's where you're going to find offices for rent and stuff like that. You can search virtual office here, or you can search mailbox, virtual mailbox, things like that. Try some different searches. Let me show you some of the ones that I come up with just today. Actually, my assistant came up with these for me just to preparing for this video. First one I want to show you because it looks kind of podunk, like it might be just a small-time operator, but if you scroll down, you realize this is actually provided by Regis. So be careful. Regis does also advertise on Craigslist. So just because you're on Craigslist doesn't mean you're dealing with a small-time operator. One. This one, $170. So to get everything set up, it's going to cost you $170. You might say, "Wow, it's really expensive." Again, it depends on your ROI here, but this is just an example of what you're looking for. We take care of all your calls and your mail. So you want to pick somebody that they actually will take mail for you. Even better if they'll scan the mail for you. If it's a real small-time operator, I've even set these things up where I just said, "Hey, I'm going to get a piece of mail. I don't have time to stop by. Can you just open it for me and let me know there should be a PIN code inside?" And I didn't even have to drive over there and get the mail. They just read it to me over the phone, um, which is another advantage of dealing with a smaller time operator. All these we have to be double checked to make sure that they offer actual office space as well as virtual office. You want to make sure that they offer both. So a lot of times I'll just have one of my outsourcers just call and find out if they offer regular office space as well. Also, with a quick Google search, you could tell if they're part of a national chain. Sometimes Regis will secretly advertise and they won't actually tell you that they're Regis in the Craigslist ad. So if you just do a quick Google search for the address, that'll a lot of times show you if the address belongs to Regis or not. This one's hard to tell. Doesn't have any kind of big chain showing up, and it's actually in the John Hancock building. So, that might be a good one no matter what, just because no one's going to really be able to tell if you have a virtual mailbox or an actual office in the John Hancock Center. That would be a great example of one. Here we go. Here's another cheap one, $60. Again, these are going to be more expensive than your mailboxes, etc., your PS store. UPS, they usually have more services than that, but you're going to have to pay a little more probably for this service. Now, this one, if you look, they have their website listed down at the bottom. So let's just check this out here. Office IBC. So we're just checking this just to see, is this a nationwide company? Okay, so we've got office suite locations. So good. They've got virtual offices, and it looks like they also have actual offices as well. And they're only in 2 cities. This is totally the type of thing you're looking for. They're only in Naperville and Lombard, which are both suburbs of Chicago. Again, if I was trying to put a listing in one of these 2 cities, this would be a great option. They have virtual offices as well as regular offices. They're not a national chain. This is the type of thing that you're looking for. Watch out for stuff like this. Like if you look down here, Americenter, they say here that if you are a part of their virtual office plan, you can be in any Americenter's location. Now, that's a warning sign for me. It might not be true, but that usually means that they're everywhere, which is not what I'm looking for. There's another Americenter's. Let's see here. See here. 3,000 places to plug in. To them, that's an advantage. To us, it's not. We're looking for small-time operators. Now, let me tell you another advantage of a small-time operator. I've even had these types of small-time operators allow me to put signage on the building. Okay, I was setting up a listing in a very competitive industry. This was last year, and the guy let me. All I was doing was renting a desk. Okay, he was totally off the radar. He let me go and actually put a sign on the outside of the building and take a photo of it, GPS coordinated with my phone. Okay, powerful, very, very powerful. If you're dealing with a national chain, you know you're gonna have to bend over backwards to try to get signage placed, especially signage on the outside of the building is going to be almost impossible. But if you're dealing with a smaller time operator, it's completely possible. Now, if you're setting up a lot of these, you're going to want to outsource it, okay? And even better if it can all be done remotely. So I've set up listings all over from my office here in Chicago. I've set up listings all over the US and told my assistant to only find virtual office providers that will scan the mail for me and where I didn't have to set it up on site. And we could set them all up. I could get the postcards remotely. I could get the mail scanned, enter the postcards, and everything, all without having to travel at all. So that's that. Those are options now. So I just gave you two options. The one option is the completely fake address where you're looking on Street View and you are building that doesn't have clear signage from Street View and you're just putting your listing there. The second option is where you're actually getting a virtual office provider and using the criteria that I just told you to pick the address. That's your second option. I have actually had people receive postcards for me at their home. Now that can work, but if you are in an industry that is too spammy, where Google is really highly watching it very carefully, you're not going to be able to get away with a residential address, okay? Because a residential address screams spam to Google. And so if you're dealing with a very, very competitive cutthroat type industry or an industry that Google is watching very carefully, you're going to need to pick a more commercial address like we showed you here, or a virtual office provider that is under the radar. But whichever technique you pick, it will take you some time to get these things set up. So I encourage you to get started just picking addresses. Get an outsourcer to get started on it for you and start developing a list of addresses in all your target cities, because it does take time to find those addresses and you need to be ahead of the game. I have a guy that spends a lot of his day every day just picking addresses for me so that when I need them, I have a ready-made list for any city that I need. Your signage is not clearly visible, but it looks commercial. It looks like your business could actually be there. Good to go.